Imagine you're peacefully coming back to your apartment. At home, dinner and the person you love are waiting for you. Suddenly, you notice that the whole building is covered with threatening flyers. On them, your photo and words full of curses. Maybe you flooded someone's place or left trash by the door? No, it's just that your neighbors don't like who you love and who you cook for. The police already know. Protect your children.
We lived together in a one-bedroom apartment, and everyone in the building knew exactly which apartments were where. So what could two guys possibly do for 7 long years in one small apartment? They were probably not just quietly living together as roommates. The alarming flyers anonymously posted stated, "Be alert. There are gender freedom lovers living in the building. Protect your children. The police are aware." I was freaking out. In the end, it all ended with that neighbor from downstairs attacking me together with his buddy.
Or imagine this, your city, a beautiful winter, snowfall, romance. From too many feelings, your loved one kisses you right on the street. And for that, you are brutally detained.
They didn't tell me anything at all when I asked, already in the car. "Where are you taking me? Why am I detained?" They hit me twice. And I realized that maybe it's better not to ask questions.
Or maybe this. You're a shy student from Siberia. You hardly talk to anyone, maybe just online. You chat there about all sorts of little things. About the new Lady Gaga album, your favorite movie, some silly romantic stuff. For that, the police take you right from your desk. They threaten you with prison and torture you.
One of the officers sat down in front of me, pulled out his phone, maybe his work phone, I don't know. He opened his photo gallery and, in a blatant and calculated attempt to shatter my composure, started showing me pictures of criminals held in the detention center, the one they said they would send me to. He started showing me the photos and said, "Look, this is Abdullah. He killed his mother. He's in the detention center. He'll be in your cell. He'll rape you 5 times a day. Look, this is Jamshid. He'll rape you 3 times a day. Look, this is Arthur. He's kind of small and weak, but he'll still rape you 3 times a day." And completely serious, his voice was a low, menacing growl that left no room for doubt. That officer sat in front of me for about 15 minutes. He showed me those pictures, laughed in my face, a harsh, mocking sound that echoed in the small, suffocating room, watching me suffer, watching me gasp for air, cry, break down, but it made him laugh. He found it funny.
That's the SWAT beating someone. Oh, our friend. Is that our friend?
Being gay in Russia is no longer just shameful, scary, or sinful. It's criminal. On November 30th, 2023, the Supreme Court of Russia declared a certain so-called international LGBT movement an extremist organization. Loving who you want is now dangerous, even if you love someone quietly, at home, behind tightly closed curtains. Even if your home isn't in Dagestan or Chechnya.
In 2017, there was what they called the gay hunt, a so-called cleansing of blood, when around 200 people were arrested and 50 of them were executed in just one night. Most of them were gay men.
So declaring the LGBT community to be an extremist organization, basically branding it as a kind of terrorist cell, only repeats and reinforces the same narratives that have been circulating for years in the Chechen Republic. Our team was originally created as a direct response to the persecution, torture, and murders that were happening there, and over time we began to see how that same rhetoric and those same practices started spreading slowly but steadily. And now we're seeing cases where something similar is already happening. Not in the North Caucasus, but somewhere in Siberia, for example, people are being detained. Detained for so-called LGBT propaganda or LGBT extremism. They're beaten at the station, threatened, their contacts are copied from their phones, and other LGBT people are hunted down.
On December 29, 2024, in a Moscow detention center, 48-year-old Andrey Kotov was found dead. He wasn't an opposition figure, a gay activist, or a rebel. A quiet entrepreneur, he had simply opened a small travel agency for people in love. Among his clients were same-sex couples who just dreamed of being themselves, at least on vacation, to stay in the single room and not have to explain anything to anyone. The authorities immediately saw in this both parts of Article 2.2 of the Russian Criminal Code, organizing an extremist community with the goal of undermining traditional Russian values.
A grown man, already well into his 40s, ended up in a detention center where he was subjected to torture and abuse, not only from his cellmates but also from the guards themselves. After some time, they decided to isolate him and placed him in a solitary cell. But even there, the violence, humiliation, and torture from the police didn't stop. And eventually, Andrey was found dead. Some say he might have taken his own life, but that has never been proven. We know, in general, that people are often raped with objects, mops, bottles, batons, and just about anything they can get their hands on. They're also beaten, sometimes for hours, until they're barely conscious. Drifting in and out. It's all done to break a person completely, to crush their will, make them surrender, and finally force them to confess to anything they're told to.
And you? Did you ever have a chance to be, let's say, happy?
No, I was never happy. I don't know what happiness is.
The sad story of a Siberian boy named August began long before he was born. In 1999, the Second Chechen War. His mother, a teenage girl who had lost almost all her family, was running through the ruins of Grozny in search of safety, hoping to escape that hell somehow. That escape turned out to be the distant Siberian city of Nizhnevartovsk, where fellow Chechens promised to take her in.
She arrived in Nizhnevartovsk. Both Chechens and other acquaintances told her there was a man, Edward Husseinov. They said, he just converted to Islam and left a criminal gang. In the 90s, he was part of a criminal organization and is still a respected criminal authority. Why don't you marry him and have his children? You'll survive. It'll be easier for you. You're 15. What else can you do here? How will you live? And so on. She had no other choice. She reluctantly agreed and married my father. And my father, he's not just a Muslim, he's part of a radical group called Hizb ut-Tahrir, an organization that is completely banned and heavily persecuted in our country. Since the early 2000s, he's had, I think, around 5 criminal cases for his extremist activities and anti-government rhetoric. He fought against the regime, but through Islam, by trying to establish a caliphate.
On the floor! On the floor!
Hizb ut-Tahrir al-Islami is an international organization banned in Germany, the United Kingdom, the United States, China, Turkey, Egypt, and most of Central Asia. Since 2003, it's also been recognized as a terrorist group in Russia. Its members are accused of spreading radical ideas, calling for violent changes to the constitutional order and threatening national security. But for little August, the biggest threat to his safety was his own mother.
Looking back now with clarity, she had me when she was still just a kid herself, only 16 years old. I still have some vivid memories of her, but they're all really bad ones, to be completely honest, probably because she was deeply traumatized by the recent brutal war there, and she treated me really harshly as a direct result. There wasn't a single day she didn't violently beat me, because I grew up in that kind of very strict religious family. Of course, they never sent me to kindergarten, you know. Kindergarten is where young boys and girls play and stay together. That's not allowed in Islam. Boys and girls being together and studying side by side, and besides, they serve pork in the cafeteria, which is forbidden. So they taught me at home. For example, she'd teach me to read a few letters, like, here's the letter M, here's the letter O. Now read the word mom. And if I couldn't read it, she'd beat me. I'd just go flying from one wall to another across the whole apartment. And she'd beat me with anything she could grab. One time she even broke off a branch outside and brought it home, just to beat me, and said, look, if you don't finish your task right now, that's it.
But once, at 6 years old, he learned that even a mother like that was better than none at all.
In the end, my mother, she went back to Chechnya and sadly left me with my father, because that's how it traditionally goes among Chechens when a family breaks up. The child always stays with the father, with the man. She just brought me by taxi to my father's building, dropped me off at the entryway and said, "Father will come home from work at 9 o'clock in the evening, he'll pick you up." And it was 10 in the morning. And forgive me, a 6-year-old child, just sat in the entryway and waited for my father to come back from work and take me. And when my father returned, he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Mother went to Chechnya." And that was it, just like that.
His father set about raising August with the zeal of a religious fanatic. In that unusually sharp for his age boy, the leader of the banned cell saw not just a son, but a faithful successor to his cause.
From my earliest memories, he forced Islam on me. He would come into my room unannounced with a book called The Life of the Prophet Muhammad and say, "If you don't read these 5 pages and 5 more pages from here by tomorrow, I'll come the next day. Say tomorrow," and he never said, "I'll beat you" outright. He was too clever for that. He chose his words with deliberate, chilling ambiguity. For example, he would say, "I will come and raise you according to the canons of Islam, whether you are willing or not." He also said, "I swore before Allah that you will be my follower, that you will tell many people about Hizb ut-Tahrir, about Islam. You will bring more people into our ideology, spreading our influence far and wide. I swore before Allah, and if that does not happen, I will be punished for it. Do you understand the weight of this responsibility?" So, my whole childhood was under his constant, suffocating, strict control.
But the problem was that August liked completely different things: pop music, queer films, makeup review videos, and classmates, people of his own sex. Of course, that was a secret.
Were there any statements about LGBT in Islam? Did he ever talk to you about that?
Yes, of course. He said that such people must be killed. That is what he explicitly stated. He gave me a Quranic example, similar to Sodom and Gomorrah. Islam has its own direct analog. It is not just that they should not exist. They are monsters, sinful creatures to be eliminated. How did Allah punish them in the Quran? He killed them all. So we must act the very same way in our modern life.
In 2017, August's father, Edward Husseinov, was once again convicted on a terrorism charge. He went on the run and hid for 6 years until his arrest in April of 2023. But that did not make August's life any easier. Numerous relatives and followers of the fugitive leader took on the task of raising the wrong heir.
When I was walking home from university, I noticed a guy standing near our building's entrance. Someone our family knew, Ibrahim. He looked at me with pure disgust and said, "Why are you walking around the city like a gay guy? You're embarrassing us. Do you even know who your father is? He's a well-known man. How can you walk around like that?" At that time it was 2022 and I already had dyed hair and cut it into this, short bob haircut. "You're a disgrace. You're transgender. How can you walk around like that?" he said. I told him, "And who even are you to me?" I somehow found the courage to say that to him, and then, the next second, his fist hit me in the face. He knocked me to the ground and started punching me, right there in the snow. I was lying in the snow near the entrance. People passing by didn't care. They just walked past. He kept hitting me, and I didn't fight back, because I knew that if I did, he'd get even angrier, and then he'd kill me. And later I found out that it was my father who sent Ibrahim to talk to me. So he was standing there, waiting for me. My father somehow still wanted to drag me into that abyss. Hizb ut-Tahrir's story, that's what it was, but it didn't work.
The only escape from that cycle of violence for him was the virtual world. During the day, August buried himself in digital textbooks, determined to graduate with honors and get as far away from Nizhnevartovsk as possible. At night, he'd sit on Vkontakte, creating private chats for people like him. There, he talked with peers about harmless things, fashion, celebrity news, cute guys. He thought, if the chats were private and the posts were hidden, then it had to be safe.
In the year 2023, in the month of December, people filed reports about me, 2 reports, and I was informed about it. Or rather, they wrote to me in private messages. Let me recall the exact wording. I'll even quote it. They wrote, jerk, your chats are finished, run out of Russia, something like that, and they sent me a receipt for a filed statement, a chilling confirmation that the threat was now official, I think from the police.
A report?
Yes, a report. I came to the university to take an exam. It was January 23rd, the winter session. I came to take the exam and someone put a hand on my shoulder from behind. I turn around and there are police officers. 3 police officers. Well, they weren't regular cops, they were detectives, 3 detectives. And one of them immediately shoves his badge in my face. His name was Igor Vishkin. The officer stepped forward and he says, "August, hi. Hand over your passport, hand over your phone." They snatched my phone, they snatched my passport. They said, "Come with us, come to the station." And so you understand, this is a very notorious station in the city, by the way. It's literally a torture place that everyone fears. It's very well known in the city. They take me to the 2nd floor, to a room with no cameras whatsoever. They take me in, and the real fun begins. The room felt claustrophobic, as there were about 8 detectives. They all crowded together, forming an intimidating circle around me. It seems to me that to them, people like me are a kind of alien, you know, something strange and incomprehensible, a specimen to be examined and ridiculed. They filmed me there, mocked me, shouting, "Hey, trans. Ah, no, Conchita worst." Every time the door opened, they yelled when they peered into the room, "Hey, Conchita worst, give us a song." There were also detectives there who knew my father personally, because my father had often been in prison and the whole city police department knew him by name and reputation. How come, with a devout father like that, such a disappointing son? We thought, when they brought in Huseinov's son, we thought a huge, strong bearded man would show up and tell us, "Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone, how's it going, brothers? It's an honor to meet you," and start telling us about Islam. But here comes some Conchita Wurst, a transgender, a walking contradiction to your family's values. What is this? This is just insane. What do you think your father is going to think about you now? Do you think he can ever show his face again? It's just insane. That's how they talk to me. That was awful.
Let's just record once again. The entirety of August's crime was creating a private chat for some guys to talk to other guys. And the fact that pictures with rainbows or flippant poles were meant only for insider eyes, for fellow people from Nizhnevartovsk, didn't bother the local security forces at all.
I tell them, it's all a joke, chat, it's all a prank, it's all a joke. And they show me and say, look, this is a poll about how you feel about LGBT. You voted yes, what is this? So for absolutely every answer of mine, they found rebuttals and showed them to me. I say, well, it's all a joke, it's not serious. You know what a sensitive topic this is right now? At my words, one of them, he wasn't just a detective, he was the head of criminal investigation for Nizhnevartovsk. He was sitting across from me and suddenly he pulled a knife out of his holster. I don't know what that's called. He comes up to me, laughing, puts the knife to my throat and says, what if I cut your throat right now? Kill you right here. And at the trial, I'll say it was a joke. It was just a prank between colleagues. Now I'm telling this, and I can't believe this even happened. It's just surreal, like something from a nightmare. Honestly, it was a total shock that left me completely numb. When he came up to me, put the knife to my throat and just stood there, not moving a muscle, just stood there. And in that moment, I think I felt some kind of strange relief. I thought, maybe it's finally going to be over and this constant fear will end. I prayed, Lord, please take me right here, just free me from all this suffering and pain. And when he came closer, I thought, maybe it's all going to end right now. Maybe my prayer worked. I started to lose it, had a complete mental breakdown, and just threw up right on the floor while sitting there like that. I don't even know, it was just some kind of uncontrollable gag reflex, my body rebelling against the sheer terror. Probably a full-blown panic attack, my system shutting down completely. After that, one of the detectives grabbed me roughly by the collar and dragged me like a sack to the bathroom across the hall, right opposite their office. After he took me there, kept me under close watch, and I threw up into the toilet. But I left some drops behind, and he saw it and said, you piece of trash, if you don't clean up every last drop of what you messed up here, I'll forcefully dunk your head into the filthy, stained toilet. I'll just kill you. I don't remember word for word, but it was something like, I'll dunk your head into the toilet and you're done. Something like that. After that, I grabbed a piece of toilet paper and wiped everything, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Then he pointed again and said, here, jerk, wipe here too, you missed the spot. And all of that. So you understand, all of that happened while I was sitting on the floor, squatting in that humiliating position, holding myself up with my hands on the dirty bathroom floor. I was sitting in that police station crying hysterically, wiping my own vomit off the floor and the toilet, completely broken and defeated.
It might seem that August's case is something completely off the charts in its cruelty, totally unthinkable, and not typical for Russia. But that's not true. Human rights activists started sounding the alarm back in the spring of 2017, when the New Gazette published its investigation showing that in the south of the country, in Chechnya, there was a systematic campaign of persecution, abductions, torture, and killings of gay men. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the United Nations, and the European Parliament all officially confirmed that this information was accurate.
In 2017, it all started in an organized way. It was what they called a hunt for gays, a blood cleansing, when around 200 people were detained and 50 were executed in a single night. Most of them were gay men.
That case was confirmed by the New Gazette when several dozen people were killed overnight in a prison in the city of Argun, where LGBT people were being held and abused. It became one of the clearest examples of what was happening there. And later, when Moskalkova, the Human Rights Commissioner, came to Chechnya, the local officials just shrugged and said, those people died of natural causes. It has nothing to do with the persecution of gays in Chechnya. We don't have gays here at all.
The official version in Chechnya was that those people were terrorists who had supposedly planned to go fight in Syria or somewhere abroad. And often, when the murders of gay men became known, they were publicly described not as executions, but as you know, like the rightful punishment of terrorists.
It looked more like business. It turned into a money-making scheme. When someone was arrested, tortured, and then told they could go free for a certain price.
What kind of ransom amounts are we talking about?
In 2022 and 2023, we were told about approximately $12,000. That's an enormous sum for most families in Chechnya, for almost everyone, really. Usually when that happens, families start gathering money from friends and relatives, explaining that their loved one was falsely accused or caught by mistake. And honestly, it's a smart move, because in Chechnya, the detention of LGBT people has practically turned into a business, a way for officials to make money off fear and silence. They've become a very common thing. Sometimes it even happens by mistake. The person isn't gay, not part of the LGBT community at all, but still gets detained and accused of being gay just because they look wrong, and the relatives say, "That's not true, please help us collect money, he was framed," and the whole family scrapes together this huge, unbearable amount so that the person can be released.
Since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, according to the activists from the Crisis SOS, the persecution of LGBT people has also become a resource to replenish the front lines.
We've documented several cases where gay men were detained and sent to the front against their will, forced to sign papers claiming they had volunteered. In one of those cases, a man managed to call from the front lines and said he had been trapped in sexual slavery after Chechen security officers told his fellow soldiers that he was gay.
In a very depressed emotional state, he said that he was basically being sexually exploited, and actually saying it, I mean, not in the same words I'm using now, of course, in much harsher ones. And so like, before he was sent to the front, his fellow soldiers were told about his sexual orientation, and for them that meant he wasn't someone worthy of respect.
A total of 7 people were detained at that time, and all 7 were sent to the front. At least one of them, as far as we know, was killed.
And what's especially telling is that at first, when people are initially forced to go to the front, they're offered a so-called choice. So like, either pay a big ransom or be threatened that a case will be fabricated against them, and they'll be sent to a detention center to await trial. And once they're in detention, the other inmates are always informed about their sexual orientation. Of course, the person chooses to go to the front rather than sit in a cell where everyone knows he's gay. And so it's, in the end, that doesn't really save them from violence anyway.
Why do you think everyone's so obsessed with gay people?
I profoundly believe they were strategically and deliberately trying to distract the entire population from the horrific acts they'd committed. They started a brutal genocide and chose to invade a sovereign Ukraine. They are systematically killing innocent civilians, and they therefore desperately needed a major public diversion, so they cynically crafted this vile narrative as their solution. Hey, we've got gays and lesbians here. Let's blame all of our nation's profound problems solely and unjustly on them.
People just went feral during the war. They lost their humanity. I mean, they're animals. How can a normal person look you straight in the eyes and say, "See that criminal, that murderer? He's gonna rape you 5 times a day," and then laugh in your face? They're not people, they're beasts, animals.
When I was really little, like 6 years old, a bunch of teens attacked me because my voice was high, like a girl's. They started teasing me. "You're a girl. You're a girl." I was just a kid, and it really hurt. I said, "No, I'm not. Look." And they went, "We'll see about that." They dragged me into the bushes, stripped me, and started touching me everywhere. First they just laughed, and then they touched me. I was just a kid. I didn't get what was happening. I only felt shame, like I'd done something wrong. Grown-ups walked by, they heard me crying, begging them to stop, and no one did a thing. That scarred me for life. As I grew up, I'd hear, those f***s should be killed. They're filthy animals. And one day it hit me, wait, that's about me. How am I supposed to live knowing they think I'm some dirty animal? What? I deserve to die. And then I realized, no, I'm a person, a good person. Yeah, I like men. That doesn't make me bad. I was about 8 when I met a deaf boy in my yard. The other kids bullied him, laughed at him, threw things, and he cried so hard. I didn't understand why they were being so cruel. It just felt wrong. I felt bad for him and stood up for him, told them to leave him alone. Later, I met his mom, and she told me he was deaf, and I remember thinking, so what? He's deaf. Big deal. We can still be friends, right? He taught me sign language, and I picked it up fast. I've known it ever since. Years later, when I moved to Moscow, I took an advanced course and got certified as a Russian Sign Language interpreter. Around that time, my dad had an accident and became disabled too. And I thought, yeah, so what? It didn't scare me or make me pity him. It was just normal to me.
He turned his natural empathy, maybe even his childhood trauma, into a remarkable fast-rising career. In just a few years, Sergey grew from a simple tutor for deaf children into a truly exceptional expert in digital accessibility. He developed new technologies that made it possible for deaf people to communicate with banks and for blind people to read contracts and confidently use financial apps on their own.
I was just one handshake away from Putin. The central bank noticed me, I was good at my job, and invited me into a working group on accessibility and financial literacy. Elvira Nabiulina herself chaired the group, leading every meeting personally. Then one day, the FBI sent a request about me, like, basically, why is an openly gay man working with you? That was it. Thanks to the people who warned me, they took a risk, but they saved my life. One night, I was coming back to my rented apartment, and there was a police officer standing right at my door. He was waiting for me. I was honestly stunned. It was some kind of weird check. He said he was just verifying who lived there, but I had no way to get out of it. I was in shock. I told my friend about it, the one who had already left the country. She said, maybe after this you'll want to leave too. But I wasn't ready to go. I wasn't ready to abandon my whole life, everything I had built in that country, and all the things I'd worked for. In the end, I left everything behind and left with just one backpack. Through Verkhny Lars, I'm basically a veteran of Verkhny Lars. It was during that short time when you could still cross on foot. That's a story of its own. By the time people from the central bank came looking for me, I was already out of Russia. But even in Georgia, it still felt dangerous. First, because there were a lot of Russian agents, and second, because flights with Moscow had just resumed, which meant that if needed, they could easily deport me on a direct flight.
This is a cabin on a cruise ship where refugees live. That's my bed right there with my everyday things, and the ones I use all the time. And over here, that's my roommate's bunk, with all his stuff packed around it.
He's gay too?
Yeah, he's gay, also from Russia. We speak the same language, but somehow it's like we're foreigners. We don't really understand each other.
How can a gay guy be so messy?
Well, that's the stereotype, that all gay men are neat and tidy. It's more about your mental state. Living like this in such cramped and uncertain conditions wears you down. After a year or two of this kind of life, people just start to lose pieces of their mental health little by little.
From a spacious Moscow apartment to a cramped cabin on a decommissioned cruise ship cluttered with a roommate's stuff, from a well-paid IT job to refugee status. Sergey knows that this fast ride down the social elevator, he took it by choice. But even after 2 years living like this, he still believes that applying for political asylum in the Netherlands was the best decision of his life.
Why did you have to run?
Well, because I'd clearly be jailed. I mean, everyone knows what happens to a gay man in a Russian prison. It's probably easier to die on your own than to face all the torture, the abuse, and everything else. And on top of that, I'm from a closed city. It's under FBI control. My sister works at a satellite plant, part of the military-industrial complex.
Okay.
Yeah, they came for her too, and then they started asking all kinds of questions because we're family. So I had to break things off with my family because I'd become too dangerous for them.
So they cut ties with you?
They did, yeah. First, my sister blamed me for ruining their lives and stopped talking to me. Then my mom said, "Sorry, I just can't keep in touch anymore." I convinced myself that maybe it's for the best. Maybe it's safer for them this way because who knows what'll happen next. It's like back in the Soviet Union, the family of an enemy of the state. I think that's what's coming to Russia again.
Tell me one thing. Why is the refugee camp on a cruise ship?
Because locals protest against building refugee centers in their neighborhoods. So the authorities have to rent places like cruise ships to house people. I live in a cabin with no window. Instead of a window, there's a mirror. At first, it was really hard. The first 3 days, I couldn't tell what time it was. I couldn't feel the passing of time. It completely messes with your head. And since it's a ship, everything's metal. The internet and cell signals barely reach the cabins. If the door's closed, you're completely cut off from the world. Also, because it's a metal ship, there's a lot of noise, especially when the engines start running on the technical deck. Sometimes it goes on all day. The whole place shakes. You feel it through your body.
This is the shower and the toilet. As you can see, I'm about average height, around 1.80 meters, and even for me, it's tight. If someone taller lived here, it'd be really uncomfortable. It's a tiny space, but I manage. The only thing is, it's super loud when you flush, so if you have to use the bathroom at night, the other person's definitely gonna wake up.
After 2 exhausting years of waiting in the camp, Sergey finally got official asylum in the Netherlands. He still has a few more years ahead to improve his Dutch, to integrate, and to wait for state housing. Though most likely, he'll have to keep living on that same retired cruise ship, with thin walls and difficult neighbors. But as they say, it's cramped but cozy. The Netherlands is one of the world leaders in developing accessible digital environments for people with disabilities. And specialists like Sergey are always in demand here.
These ideas overlap a lot. Accessibility for people with disabilities and LGBT freedom. Everyone has their own talents. Every person's good at something. That's good for the economy. When someone's working, creating, earning money, paying taxes, and making life better for others.
Now you'll be doing that for Holland?
Of course. I could have done it in Russia too. They barely have any specialists like me there. But my government turned its back on me, so fine. I'll do it here, in the country whose government accepted me.
Alex from Petrozavodsk also once worked at a bank. He was known as a top specialist. Clients loved him, his numbers kept going up. But one of his colleagues seemed a little too curious about why that successful young man never paid attention to girls.
We had a New Year's party. And at that party, one girl, in front of everyone at the restaurant, called me a fag. She told everyone, even security. Hey, did you know he's a fag? I know for a fact. He told me himself, he confessed it to me, I've got solid proof. Look, our private messages and all that. I just stood there, completely frozen and unable to speak. I was in total, utter shock. I thought, how could you betray me like this? We've known each other, worked together closely for a year and a half, and you say this? After that, I stayed a little longer at the job, trying to endure it, but then they eventually asked me to resign.
We're recording a growing number of cases where employers refuse to hire people or fire them just because someone spotted them somewhere or found out they were gay. Last year, there were a lot of police raids on clubs, targeting anyone who might belong to the community. During one of those raids, they took photos of everyone, all the visitors inside the club, and later posted them online for everyone to see. Some employers recognized their staff in those photos and fired them right away. There wasn't even any direct pressure, they just panicked, afraid there might be consequences, so they acted first and got rid of those people just in case.
Everybody on the floor!
It hurts me deeply to watch that injustice unfold. Every single time I see it happening, I just boil with a helpless, furious anger. Like, what the hell is wrong with them? Why this cruel targeting? Why don't they ever storm regular nightclubs and grab regular people there instead? I'm not saying we are different or deserve special treatment, but why only target our safe spaces? Why not take everyone equally, open the same bogus criminal cases against them all, and conduct these terrifying checks in the very same brutal way? I remember watching a video. They stormed one of the halls and started stepping on people's faces. Yeah, boots on faces. It's horrible. It's disrespectful to human beings. It's just wrong. Paistin panu, frying pan, katila, pot, haruka, fork, lusika, spoon, veitsi, knife.
A nice apartment, a good car, a small business in St. Petersburg, all that's in the past now. The present, a new country, an insanely hard language, and a completely unexpected new profession. Who would have thought that at 37, he'd be studying to become a cook at a Finnish trade school while waiting for asylum after fleeing his homeland?
I was born in Nizhny Novgorod. My dad still lives there. When I was 5, my sister, my parents and I moved to Petrozavodsk, to my mom's parents. At every new school they sent me to, I was an outcast. My classmates constantly bullied me. Sometimes even the teachers joined in. I always knew I was gay, and I figured that out pretty young. But they beat me for it. They would wait to ambush me behind the school building, right near that secluded spot where we sometimes went to secretly smoke, and there they would beat me. It was a whole terrifying crowd surrounding me, like 15 aggressive people against me all alone. I was skinny. They just violently kicked me over and over again with their heavy boots. And that was normal. I'd come back there like it was routine. I endured everything they did to me. I kept all the pain and humiliation tightly locked inside. I made sure I never cried about it in front of anyone. Maybe I only allowed myself to break down when I was completely alone, sitting hidden away in a deserted corner where no one could ever see my weakness. Other than those private moments of despair, absolutely no one ever saw me cry.
Every shove he got as a kid, he took as a push forward. Even the scandal and firing from the bank, he saw it as a sign. Time to move on, to a bigger city where you can blend into the crowd and live your life. His friend Anastasia had been asking him to come to St. Petersburg for a while. she suggested they start a small business, organizing romantic dates for couples. It was there that Anastasia introduced Alex to his future husband. That love turned out to be stronger than Russian law.
We desperately wanted to make our loving relationship official and celebrated. And it truly didn't matter to us whether it was legally recognized in Russia or not. That bureaucratic approval simply didn't matter at all for our personal commitment. I deeply wanted it for us, and my husband wanted it just as much. So we courageously did it, traveling abroad to formally unite our lives together. Fortunately, Andrew found a company called Equal Marriage that specializes in these matters. They help same-sex couples get married legally in Portugal. I fully understand that if something ever happened to us back home, that piece of paper means nothing in Russia. Absolutely nothing in the eyes of the law. It's just a meaningless document you could literally throw away without any consequences there. But for us, it's a symbol of our love. A symbol that is always with us, for life. A real document.
The two of them have been together for over 10 years now, and just like they promised each other on their wedding day, not only in joy but in hardship too.
I started having some persistent and concerning pain, which is why I finally decided to go to a trusted private clinic. They thoroughly checked me over and then said with serious concern, "You need to see an oncologist immediately with these worrying results."
What was it?
I had cancer of the left testicle. They amputated it. I went through 3 rounds of chemotherapy, and it's just horrible. It fundamentally and irrevocably changes your entire perspective on life and fragility when you spend endless, draining months confined to a sterile hospital ward, surrounded by people who are right on the terrifying, precarious edge of death. It's unbearable. After the 2nd round of chemo, all my hair started falling out. My eyebrows, my eyelashes, gone. I shaved my head completely bald. And I decided, I'm not going to sink into it. When my 3rd round of chemo ended, I went straight back to work. I worked. I kept busy. I traveled. We even went to Tallinn with Andrew.
If you were alone, if you didn't have Andrew, do you think you'd have made it through on your own?
Probably not. It is an immense burden that is far too hard for anyone to carry completely alone. Thankfully, he was always there for me, a constant presence. He never once left my side through it all. But sometimes when I looked in his eyes, I saw it. That deep despair.
And that's exactly the kind of love and care from one man to another that made the neighbors turn against them. They didn't like seeing one guy walking another sick guy home, holding his arm, carrying his bags, hugging him, supporting him. First, the neighbors stopped getting into the same elevator with them. Then they smashed the windshield of their car. Then they hung humiliating flyers in the building. And the last straw was the attack. That night, Alex was coming home, exhausted after another surgery.
I had bandages here, some blood there. And in that state, I finally came home. I slowly walked into the dimly lit building. Gennady was standing there with the building manager. And they started mocking me again. "You faggots have lost your damn minds." I don't remember exactly what they said. I just don't. One of them hit me, but I managed to get away and ran home. I came in, face all swollen, told Andrew what happened. He got furious. I said, "No, lock the door," and we just sat there. Well, what else could we do? I was in shock. I thought about calling the police, but then I changed my mind. We packed our things and left. Never went back to that apartment again. We stayed with Anastasia for a while. Then we decided to leave, to get out of the country. we bought tickets and left. Through Turkey to the Netherlands.
Basically, these new laws give people the right to commit violence and interrogate others, sometimes not even those who belong to the LGBT community, but anyone who just looks or acts different. One of the most shocking recent cases, honestly, was when a father turned his own child into the police for being transgender, claiming the kid was an extremist because of it. It's terrifying to see how hatred is being legalized, step by step, under the guise of protecting society. According to our surveys, around 43% of people experience violence in 2024. Back in 2022, it was much lower, about 30%. So there was a big jump in 2023, and now it's turning into a steady upward trend. For 2024, we expect it to keep rising further. We are also seeing more and more people admitting they've thought about suicide, feeling like there's no safe place left for them in their own country. In 2022, that number was only about 3 or 4%. By 2023, it had jumped to nearly 15%, a massive rise, truly alarming. The number of people who actually tried to take their own lives has also gone up, though not as steeply. In 2022, it was just 2 or 3%, and by 2023 it had climbed to around 3 or 4%. Still, that's a trend that can't be ignored.
Alex and his husband didn't have a concrete plan. They just tried to survive however they could. Somewhere they'd heard that you could apply for asylum in the Netherlands. So they bought tickets, packed their suitcases, and went for it. But they quickly learned about the unpleasant part of the process. At the airport, the police explained the Dublin Convention. The case would most likely end in rejection and deportation, best case to Helsinki, worst case back to Russia. And while everything was being sorted out, they were told, spend the night on the cold airport floor and then about 50 days in a migration jail.
We lost a lot of weight there. When we finally got here, our friends, the ones we later met and started talking to, saw us in Vantaa, in the reception center, and when they looked at us, they said, "Who are these prisoners? So skinny, and walking like that." And yeah, we really did walk like that. We'd actually learned it there, walking in circles when they let us outside, hands behind our backs. The more laps you made, the better, because sometimes they wouldn't let you out at all. Yeah. So it was pretty miserable. I wouldn't recommend risking it and go. Don't go to any EU country if your visa was issued. Buy another one.
The point of the Dublin procedure is this. If you apply for asylum in one EU country, it doesn't necessarily mean that country will process your case. For example, if you first entered France but later applied for asylum in the Netherlands, that won't work. France will be the one reviewing your case because it was the first country you entered when you came to the EU.
Sergey and his boyfriend also made the same impulsive escape from Russia to the Netherlands, and they too were deported to Finland, under that same Dublin regulation. Sure, his own fault. Didn't Google it, didn't prepare. But they had to flee too fast when his quiet, ordinary life as a waiter in St. Petersburg collapsed in a single night.
I was working at an Irish pub back then, and 3 men came in. Turned out later they were police officers, but dressed in plain clothes. And they immediately put handcuffs on me and led me to their car. I barely had time to ask a coworker to grab my jacket from the back room. At that moment, I had no clue what was happening or why I was being detained. Nobody told me anything. And when I finally asked in the car, what am I being detained for? They hit me twice. And that's when I realized, gotta keep quiet. Later, the investigator showed me a video from Instagram. He said I was being detained because of it, and that they were deciding whether to open a criminal case. Honestly, I felt huge relief. I thought I'd been arrested for murder, really. You know, like in those stupid crime shows when they lock you up for 20 years for something you didn't do. The way they grabbed me, I was sure it was something huge, that my life was over. After they started beating me in the car, I thought, yeah, this must be something really bad.
The video Sergey had filmed 3 months earlier really seemed like nothing, just a silly Instagram moment. It was winter, his beloved St. Petersburg, a beautiful snowfall, his partner beside him. He felt a wave of affection, leaned in for a kiss, and posted it to his feed as a memory. I mean, who hasn't done that?
It was late at night, and the snow was so beautiful. I said to Andrew, hey, let's film a little video of us kissing. Look how gorgeous it is. We were a bit tipsy. Andrew said, yeah, let's do it. So we shot the video. That's our building, right there. Oh, and behind it there's a church, the Church of Easter Cake. The church ended up in the background. And so, yeah, here's that very same video. And it was filmed late at night. We were both fully dressed, wearing hats and coats. You can't even tell it's a church at all. You only see a wall in the dark. No crosses, no symbols, nothing. Just the side of some building. You'd never guess it was a church, honestly. And then they told me that some woman from that parish, a complete stranger to me, went and filed a complaint about it. And the next day, I got a call saying a criminal case had been opened. I was now officially a suspect in a criminal case.
The case against Sergey became a local sensation. St. Petersburg media exploded with snarky headlines. Of course, it wasn't just about offending believers' feelings, it was about extremists from the so-called sinister LGBT organization. A combo no propagandist could resist.
They posted our photos that Andrew and I had posted on our social media. Honestly, even I was shocked by how exposed it all became. It's one thing to talk about your sexuality with people you know and trust, but another thing entirely when newspapers blasted across all of St. Petersburg. And at first, I tried not to pick up the phone or talk to journalists. My lawyer said that since the story was already spreading anyway, I might as well communicate with them. So during one of those calls, I think it was with a reporter from The Youth Truth, I finally asked, hey, where did you even get all these materials you're using in your articles? He said the so-called victim, that parishioner, had probably taken screenshots, went there just to get even more offended, and then started sharing them with everyone. That's how it all spread. But the worst part was, somehow the journalists got hold of the official document about the criminal case, and right there on the first page in big letters was our home address. About 2 weeks after those articles started coming out, Andrew and I were walking back home from the store. One evening, right by the front entrance, 2 young guys stopped us and said, no f***s are gonna live here. If we see you again around this place, we'll stab you. Got it?
But while propagandists were thrilled by the scandal, lawyers were terrified of it. One after another, they refused to take the case. Too risky and pointless anyway. The only brave one they managed to find was through the human rights LGBT organization Out Movement.
The lawyer asked if I had any medical conditions that could possibly help me stay out of custody. I told him that I was HIV positive and that I had to take my antiretroviral therapy every single day at a strict time. That at least gave us some hope that the investigators wouldn't dare send me to a detention center. So we prepared all the documents and brought the investigator an official medical certificate confirming my diagnosis. he still refused to set any official restraint, so he could later use that as leverage to pressure me into cooperating with the investigation. But in early May, about a month after the case began, I got a call from the police. I don't even know if it was the investigator himself or someone else from the police, but they called my boss at the pub and told him about my HIV positive status. They demanded that he fire me right away, saying that people with HIV aren't allowed to work in food service, like I was some kind of danger to everyone there.
But that's not true.
It's not true. Of course it's not. Because with an undetectable viral load and regular treatment, you can do anything. The only restriction might be on working as a practicing surgeon.
The first trial ended with an almost symbolic fine, $123. But the lawyer warned the guys not to get their hopes up, and sure enough, the case was reopened. Sergey was summoned for another interrogation, which meant real prison time was coming. They had to run. He took a train to Kazakhstan, then went through Turkey to Netherlands on his Finnish visa. Then came the migration jail, the refugee camp, and just like with Alex and his husband, deportation. The Finnish visa gave the Dutch authorities the right to apply the Dublin procedure and refused to review his asylum request.
They took us straight out of the camp where we were living. It was the middle of the night, around 4 in the morning, when they came for us and drove us to the airport. Of course, they didn't give us back any documents. They brought us into some restricted area inside the airport where their own police were waiting. They searched our belongings to make sure we weren't carrying anything illegal, gave us some papers, and told us which gate to go to at a certain time. You know, we were the very first ones brought onto the plane. No one else had boarded yet, and we were already sitting inside. It looked exactly like we were being escorted under guard. It all felt so serious.
Frustrating, sure. But hey, Helsinki's still a great European city, the guys thought. They had no idea that right after landing in the Finnish capital, they'd be sent off by train to somewhere much farther away. They were placed in the remote polar town of Kemi, not far from the Swedish border. Mosquitoes in the summer, freezing cold, and endless polar night in the winter. But complaining would have been pointless. They still had the one thing that mattered most: freedom.
Kemi is right on Finland's far western border, just about 20 kilometers from the town of Tornio, which sits right next to Sweden. It's a quiet little coastal city on the Gulf of Bothnia, surrounded by snow and sea, basically the very southern tip of Lapland, where the landscape starts to feel almost Arctic. From here to the Arctic Circle, it's roughly 100 kilometers, and about the same distance to Rovaniemi, the Christmas capital, home of Santa Claus himself. So yeah, we're basically living right next to an endless holiday. But sadly, we're the outsiders at this big celebration of life. I'm from a small town in the Murmansk region. And honestly, this place we're living in now, it's the worst place I've ever lived. Really, it's just awful, ugly, completely unfit for life, without a car. It's boring. It's dull and pretty rundown. You'd think that being in Finland, we'd see something a little different, something tidier, but we ended up in the cheapest, roughest neighborhood in all of Kemi. Mostly refugees live around here. The houses are old wooden buildings, leftovers from the factory days, and everything feels kind of forgotten and worn out. Now it's basic housing in buildings that probably should have been demolished 15 years ago, but are somehow still standing. Every night, the police drive around here, making sure nothing's happening. We have some friends in another building, and their neighbors, local Finns, are kind of shady types, drug dealers. People keep coming to their windows at night, knocking and asking what's going on.
Finns?
Yeah, Finns.
But sure, blame the migrants.
But of course, it's always the migrants who get blamed. Always.
What's it like, being gay in Kemi?
Very exclusive, I'd say. At some point, we honestly thought we were the only gay people in the whole town. But no, turns out we weren't. About 6 months after moving here, we met the local LGBT community, which turned out to be, well, 3 or 4 people at most. We were honestly pretty surprised, and kind of amused too. We were honestly stunned to learn that the local activists, just think about it, they live here in Kemi, in Finland. And except for one single person, none of them had ever even been to Helsinki Pride. And these are supposed to be LGBT activists, mind you. By the way, when we heard there was going to be a local community meeting, we decided to go and see what it was all about. So Andrew and I showed up together, and there was one woman there. But besides the 3 of us, no one came. So basically, if Andrew and I hadn't shown up, she would have been sitting there all alone. That's all you need to know about the LGBT movement in Kemi.
Владимирский централ, ветер северный, этапом истерии жила немерено, лежит на сердце тяжкий груз. Владимирский централ.
But it's not LGBT people who ruin lives here, it's the harsh local laws. After being deported to Finland, Alex and his husband waited 33 months for an answer on their asylum request. During that time, they learned the language decently, got new professions, adapted, and didn't expect what came next.
We were denied, yeah. They invited us to the police, read the decision with a translator, and said our asylum request was rejected because there were no grounds to believe we'd be in danger in Russia. They said we could turn to the police for help.
In Russia?
In Russia.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah. They said, things are basically fine in Russia. So you can go back. How can you even describe what that feels like after 3 years of waiting? I was completely shattered, broken. But I didn't cry, didn't lose it. I just accepted it as a fact. And I had to stay strong for Andrew. He took it harder, much more emotionally. I desperately needed to hold myself together. My primary role was to be the one to support him completely. If we'd both fallen apart, that would have been a disaster, yeah. I really don't like remembering those days. They were awful. A horrible new year.
Unfortunately, the Finnish state often doesn't care much about what threatens you back in Russia. The main thing is that you're from Russia. Like, I think a lot of people get denied asylum simply because of their Russian passport. We personally know 2 couples, and one guy who came here on his own. He's already been denied asylum. Every month they publish updated statistics showing how many cases were reviewed and how many actually got approved. Last month there were 86 cases in total. Only 6 of them were accepted. So less than 10%. It's a pretty grim number, honestly.
A rough childhood, being fired for being gay, cancer. Alex knows one thing for sure. Giving up just isn't an option. He and his husband filed an appeal against the Finnish authorities' decision because they still believe that in a democratic country, you don't have to be afraid to stand up to the state, to go to court, to prove you're right. And because they know, there's simply no way back.
I've got friends still living there who tell me, everything's fine here. Just a couple days ago, my ex called me and said, Forget Finland, man. Why do you even need this? Come back home. So you gave some interview, and whatever. Just say you got carried away. You'll live fine here. I said, are you out of your mind? And he said, my uncle's a judge. If anything happens, he'll get you off. I was shocked, to be honest.
He's gay?
Yeah. He's gay, just like me. I couldn't believe it.
And he's fine there?
Yeah, he's fine. Lives in his little village. Feels good. Well, that's his choice.
Do you think people still face danger in Russia?
Of course. Absolutely. I don't think it's over. I think it's only going to get worse. They'll start jailing people. There'll be new charges, criminal cases. God forbid, even executions someday. Like it was long, long ago.
Do you think Russia could reach the point where, not just in Chechnya, but across the country, they start executing LGBT people by the dozens?
I don't think so. I really hope not. 10 years ago, though, I probably would have said the same thing. What are you talking about LGBT extremism in Russia? That's nonsense. Still, honestly, I think it's pretty unlikely, if only because even in Chechnya they don't admit its executions of LGBT people. They just say those people died of natural causes or for other reasons, or even claim they're alive and doing fine. Stop asking questions.
I can honestly say my cousin was gay, and I truly regret that he only came out to me so late, almost right before he died. He was killed. And no, it wasn't AIDS, so please don't even think that. He was nearly 40 when he finally told me and our other cousin the truth. He'd been carrying that secret inside him for so many years, living in fear and silence. And I'm just so sorry that our society is still the kind of place where someone like him had to hide who he really was until the very end.
Incredible footage. Lolita, the pop star who now supports the annexation of Crimea and the invasion of her native Ukraine, once publicly stood up for gay people. Yes, that actually happened in Russia. So it must have been a long time ago. In fact, it was back in 2009 at a press conference called Russian Stars Against Discrimination of the Gay Community. At the time, it all made sense. Just look at the images and music videos of Russia's biggest pop stars, Kirkorov, Baskov, Lazarev, and earlier, Moisev and Shura. It's pretty clear. Maybe nobody ever came out publicly, but their work was hardly what you'd call straight. From Moscow to the farthest corners of Russia, there were hundreds of gay clubs, lesbian bars, saunas, drag shows. Some drag queens even became national celebrities, starring in TV series, music videos, hosting shows. Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Madonna, they all performed in Russia. Madonna even spoke out from the stage in support of Russian LGBT people and opened her openly gay-oriented fitness club Hard Kandru in Moscow. That was in Russia, not New York, not Amsterdam, not that long ago, really.
I remember my teenage years with real warmth. I was born and raised in Tomsk. Back in 1993, Tomsk hosted its very first lesbian film festival, right in one of the city's main theaters. Not hidden away in some basement. It was a big deal, a bold and genuinely cool event for its time. And when I got a bit older, I remember my first years volunteering with different LGBT organizations in Tomsk, a small city of just about 500,000 people. There were 3 or 4 active groups back then, and they organized workshops, public discussions, big citywide events on HIV prevention. It honestly felt like we were moving forward by leaps and bounds, like real progress was finally happening. I used to look at America and think, they've got all these religious fanatics always banning something, never letting people speak freely on TV. And here, in Russia, we've got Tattoo. 2 girls kissing on national television in the early 2000s, and everyone's fine with it, everyone's cheering. It felt open, even bold. And besides Tattoo, there were so many queer figures in pop culture back then, singers, artists, actors. For example, the band Guests from the Future had this daring music video where Eva Polna, the lead singer, was hugging and almost kissing another woman. Shura's videos were incredibly colorful, flamboyant, and openly queer, full of drag queens, men dressed as women, bright and unapologetic. Even Hands Up had a whole video built around a story of a man falling in love with another man who dresses as a woman, showing their relationship on screen. It was bold, playful, and for that time, honestly groundbreaking. Peskov, who was always dressing up as a woman, for me as a kid, that was absolutely mind-blowing, something I'd never seen before. And then there was Boris Moiseev, who one day just openly came out. But even if he hadn't, I know I still would have realized I was gay. It just probably would have taken me a lot longer, been way harder, and much more painful to go through that process of self-acceptance. Because I watched all that and thought, this is okay, this is normal. And in my future, I'll live in a world where I can be happy. I think starting around 2010, and for nearly 8 years after that, there was always a queer community column at the May Day marches in St. Petersburg. People came out with rainbow flags, banners, bright signs, chanting slogans in support of LGBT rights and equality. And with every passing year, that column kept growing, not because there were suddenly more gay people, but because more allies, activists, and different organizations joined in, standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and hope. And more than that, when that column marched, you can find the footage. People leaned out their windows waving rainbow flags and shouting words of support.
Love is stronger than hate. Love is stronger than hate. Love is stronger than hate.
We're not talking about introducing punishment for homosexuality or for, well, you know what I mean.
The free Russia of the past, August barely caught a glimpse of it. Think about it. Putin's been in power longer than August has been alive. Altogether, in the Nizhnevartovsk police department, this guy was tortured for 2 full days, and then suddenly released, like nothing had happened. They just told him to come back the next morning to sign some routine paper so the police wouldn't bother him anymore.
The next day I come to the station and Igor Vishkin takes me into the office, pulls out 2 or 3 sheets of paper, says I need to sign as a witness in a criminal case for a murder that happened back in 2018. It was already all filled out by hand in his distinctive slanted handwriting. Besides that, all the answers were already written in advance, fabricating a complete fiction of my involvement. I read through them. The questions were things like, did you personally know Boris, last name, who was killed on May 6th, 2018? A man I had never even heard of before that moment. And then he handed it to me to sign. He said, if you sign this, we'll leave you alone for good. Everything's fine, we'll part peacefully, no more trouble from us. I asked, why? What is this for? He said, it's just a formality, nothing for you to worry about. We've got old cases piling up, need to clear the books, and we have a quota for witnesses. He said, yeah, a quota. We need to fill the database with witnesses for the statistics, you understand? So I signed everything, just to get them off my back exhausted and seeing no other way out.
Now August was under their control. He says that ever since, they kept calling him in as a witness and persistently offered him money to spend time in a detention center, supposedly to seduce cellmates and get them to confess, and of course to give up other LGBT people. These days, a caught gay man is worth more than a repeat offender.
It's a tactic they use all the time. When someone gets arrested, the next targets are usually found right in that person's phone. They dig through contacts, messages, social media, trying to trace everyone they've ever talked to, and then they write down the names, keeping those people on their radar for later.
Recently, I've got a friend who's literally going on fake dates right now just to create an alibi. He told me in meticulous detail how it all works behind the scenes. He actually had a serious criminal case opened against him. His boss tried to rape him, he bravely fought back and ended up stabbing the guy in legitimate self-defense. The investigator told him, work with us and we'll clear you. The investigator went for them and told him, cooperate with us and we'll clear you. In the end, they did exactly that. And now he essentially works for them as a full-time informant. He told me they rent him an apartment in a discreet location. Meanwhile, he actively chats with guys on a dating site, plays along with their intentions, and invites one of them to the apartment the cops specifically gave him. And when the guy shows up, they storm in and grab him on the spot, no warning. After that, they start demanding money from his family, threatening them, saying, either you pay up or he's going to prison or straight to the war. That's how it goes every single time.
Run or not? That wasn't really a choice for August. The only question was how, because the very first time he tried to apply for a passport and went to the draft office for a clearance paper, they immediately handed him a military summons. Evacuating August in that situation was only possible thanks to the human rights group, the Crisis SOS, the same organization that's been rescuing hundreds of LGBT people from the Caucasus. And even though they usually don't work with other regions, they just couldn't say no to him. Now he's safe. He's living while waiting for legal status in one of the European countries. It's still not safe to share more details.
I'm living in good conditions now, in a hotel actually. I got lucky. It's a 4-star hotel, and I've got the room all to myself.
And the allowance?
The allowance is very small.
How small?
I won't name the local currency, probably around $18.
Per day?
Per week.
Per week.
Even less than $18, about 16.
And what can you buy with that?
Nothing at all. I can't even afford basic clothes. I can show you my shoes. You'll be absolutely shocked when you see them. Look, right here. The seam just ripped open completely. I glued it back together with super glue. Same thing on the other shoe, they're both falling apart. I can't buy anything new, not even a cheap pair from the market. I've got no money. It's the same with the rest of my clothes. Here, I patched this part myself. No money. Not even for basics like clothes. But I don't really stress about it. I try not to think about it. I believe things will get better eventually. For now, that's just how we live. Some people have it worse.
€254 per person.
Per month?
Yeah.
In Finland?
Yes. That's enough for food and our reception center. And for example, when we went to Pride in Helsinki, they actually paid for our train tickets there and back because we told them we're gay and that it was important for us to go to Pride. And honestly, they handled it calmly. No questions, no drama. Complaining about social support after living in Russia would feel like a sin, really. Let's put it this way. The Finnish government doesn't owe you anything, but they still choose to help.
When we first arrived here at this college and went to introduce ourselves at the local school, we were greeted by a wonderfully kind local coordinator. We openly told her we are a married couple, that we are from Russia and that we are refugees. And when we mentioned that we are part of the LGBT community, she became completely flustered and overly apologetic. She immediately started calling everyone, frantically asking where the gender-neutral bathrooms were located. I was utterly shocked by this extreme reaction. I tried to reassure her, it's really fine, please. We don't need any special treatment, we can just use the regular bathrooms. But she insisted, no, I must check, just in case, to ensure you feel welcome. If you look around, you will see all the teachers here wear rainbow ribbons in solidarity. There are plenty of safe places here where you can just come in and be completely open about your feelings and your emotions. I have never once had to hide the fact that I am gay here. I dressed exactly how I wanted, without fear. When we joined LGBT rallies or went to officially ask for asylum, we carried our flags proudly and no one pointed fingers, no one attacked us. It is just so much more open, calm, and genuinely welcoming here.
Back in Russia, you couldn't even do normal things with your partner, like kiss or hold hands in public, simple everyday things, but you're deprived of them. And when I kissed a guy for the first time in public here in the Netherlands, no one even looked twice. It was completely normal. That feeling was unreal. Like, seriously? You can actually live like this? Just be yourself?
The heroes of this story are still rebuilding their lives from scratch, but there's already some good news. Thanks to volunteers, we managed to get August new shoes, clothes, a bike, language courses, and sessions with a therapist who helps him deal with PTSD. Sergey managed to get justice from the camp authorities. They moved him away from his difficult, messy roommate, not just into a private cabin, but into an apartment. The guys from the northern Finnish town of Kemi, despite all their fears, were granted asylum. Almost 3 years of uncertainty are finally behind them. Alex and his husband are still fighting for the right to stay in Europe. If the first appeal doesn't work out, they have every legal right to file a second one. And besides, their legal right to personal happiness. That can't be taken away anymore.